aren't uprisings all over the country, maybe there will be.
People need to start taking to the streets. This is a dictator.
Enemies of the state.
Show me where it says that protests are supposed to be polite and peaceful.
Hey, welcome everybody to the Rebel Alliance podcast. My name is Aaron. Thank you for stopping by and spending your early afternoon with me and talking about associations, preparedness, local governments, constitutional stuff, all that good stuff that we as Americans kind of take to heart. So that being said, I think I messed up the episode number. I think this is episode 69, but I wrote 67. I could be wrong. I've got to check to see what I said in the last video. And I really need to get a whiteboard where I write all this stuff down. But today we're going to be talking about how to start a survival garden and kind of the steps you need to take to get this going. Now is the time. You should already have your seeds started and that sort of thing. But a survival garden's a little bit different than your typical garden at your house and, you know, your fruits and vegetables and all that stuff that you're growing. So that being said, let me take care of some housekeeping and then we will get right in today's topic. I'm going to try to keep this short today because I was getting caught up in local town politics, realized that town council, one of the members called me out from 2 meetings ago now from some comments I made. So now I have to make sure I'm there tonight at 7 o'clock to rebut what they said, and along with some other things that's going on in our town here. So that being said, all the websites are back up and running. If you're looking for more information on associations, you can head over to the PMA Manifesto. We have our monthly call coming up in March, so make sure you get on the newsletter, get into the Facebook group. Erica lets everybody in on Wednesdays. And then if you're looking for, and you can get your DIY templates over there. If you're in the Facebook group, you can get a discount code for the PMA Manifesto, which we kind of look at the top, I think it's top 10 myths about associations and all the bad information that's being pushed out there. If you go over to East Coast PMA, you can get more information over there. You can also get the DIY templates there, along with some other things, schedule an appointment with me, schedule some consulting time, that sort of thing. And then listen to past episodes. I'm consistently putting in all the past episodes that I was hosting on the website, but I think that was slowing it down. So I have everything also backed up to TalkShoe. So I'm just importing all that stuff over slowly but surely. And then, so let me just throw the website there just in case you need more information and content. That's eastcoastpma.com. And then for the templates, it's going to be either eastcoastpma.com or the PMA Manifesto, where you can also get the PMA Manifesto. And then the last thing we're going to talk about is Rebel Alliance, or not Rebel Alliance, is StartNow Embassy servers. They are one of the individuals that I like to plug here because I have one of their StartNow servers, the embassy server. It's fantastic. I do everything from end-to-end encrypted text messages between the association members and friends and family to running my own chat GPT where all the data and language model stays on my system. So that being said, let's hear from the folks over at the StartNow.
We all save our data, but where is it saved? In the cloud, which is actually this building in one of these computers with millions of others. This is called a honeypot, a single place full of data worth a hacker's time to steal. But instead, if you saved your data on your own computer at home, you wouldn't be worth the attack. Saving your own data is easy. Simply plug in a StartNow device and start saving all your own data today. So, will you stay in the honeypot, or will you take control of your data? Start now. StartNow.
Yeah, and they are a great system. So if you do go over and get one, let me know in some of the comments or shoot me an email. Let me know what you think and how you like it set up. There's so much you can do with it. It's more than what I can just talk about in 30 seconds. But definitely check out some of their YouTube videos and their website. And then if you use the code Rebel Alliance at checkout, you get 9% off. And if you use a Fold card, I believe you can still get a gift card to them, which is also discounted. So it's over like 15% off, something like that. So that being said, let's get the comments on here and let's get into today's topic, how to start a survival garden. So the reason why I did this is we're all, most of us want to live a more free life, more self-sustainability without having to be connected to the quote unquote grid or relying on, the awesome work that all the truck drivers do to get supplies everywhere, except for those that live in New York now, because New York's trash. And now they're just, some of them are banning going there. So that being said, I think it's important to understand that, you need to have a regular garden, but what if things get bad and, you want to have more of a survival garden or food that's going to last a little bit longer. Now, not all the stuff I'm going to talk about at the end. I'm going to give you my top 10 that I think you should have in your survival garden. So, stick around for that. But you're also going to kind of, this could be used for gardening in general or self-preparedness in general, but I'm trying to tailor this a little bit more to higher density, calorie dense foods that you could have readily available that you can use with canning, dehydrating, freeze drying, all those types of different storage methods, which I'm not going to get into too much, but basically, I think it's very important not only to have a regular garden where you grow your lettuce and stuff like that, but have part of that garden or, as we'll talk in a little bit, maybe a separate spot where you're doing more of a survival aspect of it. So it is very important in this day and age, I think, to have that self-sufficiency reliance, especially with everything that's going on in this world. We saw it from shortages during the COVIDs and everything that happened a few years ago to, supply chain breakdowns. We had container ships sitting out at ports and not being able to come in. So if this stuff happens, or maybe there's a natural disaster in your area, that you want to make sure that you have this stuff readily available. So that's why I think this is kind of a little bit of an important an important topic. I was going to say context. That's not the right word. Important topic. And that's also because if you have a community and you have an association, these are some of the things that you should be talking about, especially if you're a community-based association. And maybe even if you're not, maybe if you're just growing your association from people who want to live a more holistic lifestyle, or they want to use alternative medicine, or they want to use different forms of healing and herbs and that sort of thing and natural remedies, then maybe this is also something they would be interested in. You could hold a class on this, say, listen, I heard this crazy guy on the internet talking about survival gardens, and let's, maybe this is something we need to do. We just had one of our meetings and I said, I would love to take a part of my land and turn that into a community garden where we could all, benefit from it. So that is kind of why I think it's important. So the first thing you want to do is assess your space and your resources, right? Not everybody lives on a quarter acre, 10 acres, 100 acres. Some of us live in apartments. Some of us are still stuck in these war-torn cities that are high in crime, and people are getting punched in the face and shot on subways, and there's drugs and fentanyl, needles everywhere. And for one reason or another, maybe you're separated and your kids are in that city and you don't want to leave them, or maybe it's your job is not remote, or you can't just pick up and leave because maybe you're like myself that's got 19 and a half years in a job and you're so close to retirement, it wouldn't make sense to move. You'd throw away all those years. I understand that. So we have to look at all aspects of this and how we can make this doable for everybody, not just somebody that's out in the sticks, so to speak. So you want to evaluate your space. Now, if you're in some place like a condo association that has an HOA, you're going to have to be a little creative. I think a lot of good ideas that would help this, whether you're in an apartment or you have a little balcony or you're in a condo association, is you can use different forms of camouflage that kind of camouflage what you're doing. I wouldn't go digging in the ground, but having Mother Earth boxes, or like the item of the day or the item of the week I put up on the website, the 10 or 5 gallon grow bags. You can get 10 of them, I think, for like $17 through Amazon. And they're fabric. They're easy to move around. You can plant multiple things in them. You can do potatoes, which we'll talk about, and all that type of stuff. So you want to make sure that you have, some space, even if it's a small space. Something is better than nothing, right? So think of patios, small yards, and balconies, especially for those that are in, more of a city urban environment or in some type of HOA. Now, for those of you that have, a quarter acre and up, there's many resources where you can see people that farm a ton of stuff on a quarter acre. And, you might have to cut up some of your nice grass and put in gardens. But again, you can still use those raised garden beds and stuff like that, like we're doing here, to be able to supply for your food. Now, you want to also consider sunlight exposure. If you have a really shaded area, you're going to want something that you can move around really easily, whether it's earth boxes or the grow bags, something that you can maneuver so they're in the sunlight. I have to cut down some trees here to open up some area to let some sunlight come in. Maybe that's something you have to do on your quarter acre, half acre, whatever it is that you have. And again, for those of you that are in the war-torn cities, the Democrat-run cities here in the US, then you're going to have to be a little bit more creative with this stuff, and you're going to want to probably conceal some of this stuff so you don't have neighbors coming by and pulling off a tomato and that sort of thing, right? So consider the amount of light exposure. And if you're not sure how much light you need, when you get your seed packets, if you're starting from seed, they give you all the information on the back. And I believe when you buy seedlings, all that information is on the little tab thing too. So, if you are planting and sowing directly in the dirt, for us where I'm at, we're not far from Yukon. I can bring soil to get it tested. I don't know what that is like in your area. And frankly, I am terrible when it comes to that stuff. I know my old neighbor, he used to get his soil tested for how to naturally kill weeds and stuff like that. And, different things. But for me, I'm just, I'm getting as much, manure that I can get. I'm trying to do hubiculture. I got plenty of down logs and trees around here. This property hasn't been touched in probably the last 15 years, the people that owned it, because they were elderly before us. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done. So you can improve your soil if you have bad soil. Now, if you're somewhere where there's like clay and all your water does is pool and it doesn't drain, and you're maybe in more of a desert environment, then you're going to want to do some type of raised garden beds, and you can make those from all the material that's sitting around your house, whether you have trees or rocks or what have you. You can find stuff there to utilize. Don't feel you have to go out and buy stuff. That's one of the great things about homesteading. I try to use everything that's on the property. So if I got some trees that are down, I'm going to use those as a border, and then I'm going to fill that up with other brown and green material, and then throw the dirt and topsoil and everything like that on it, and then manure, and mix it all in so I can grow. You also want to look at what do you have for tools? Maybe all you have is a small spade to work in a garden. You want to make sure you have some tools. A great place for that is Harbor Freight. You can pick stuff up fairly cheap, and you don't need a ton of stuff, just a few hand tools, a few small shovels, that sort of thing. And you want to know where your water sources are, whether you're collecting water or whether you're using water, preferably not city or town water, because there's so much crap in it as far as fluoride and chlorine and everything else. If you have a well, it's probably better. But if you have, if you can do a rain catchment system, even something that's a little small, maybe it's only 10 gallons that you can collect to water the garden, what have you. But are things that you can do to try to stay away from using tap water. And, especially if you're on any type of city type grid where you're getting all that junk in the water. Now, one thing I didn't talk about, I'm going to throw it in here for, I didn't write down for planning your garden. Not only do you want to define goals and look what you're looking to achieve in your survival garden. So for me, it's high calorie dense food that will store for a while, but you also want to think about where you're getting your seeds from. Now there's a whole bunch of different types of seeds. I try to use heirloom seeds. You can actually get quote unquote survival garden kits on like Amazon and other places where it has all different type of stuff in it. Everything from tomatoes, cucumbers to thyme and rosemary. So it has a very wide variety. And the best thing is when you let some of that stuff go to seed, you can save those seeds, dry them, and then you can keep them for up to 5 years, depending on the climate. So just keep that in mind when we're going through all this, where you're going to get your seeds from. If this is your first year doing it, I would say try to start from seedlings. It's something you got to work yourself into, starting from seeds, or start stuff from seeds that's really easy, like yellow squash, zucchini. That stuff always grows. I've never had a problem germinating that stuff. So you want to define your goals, discuss what you aim to achieve with your survival garden. You also want to talk about food security, not only about the sustainability and self-sufficiency of having a garden, but how you're going to protect your garden, not only from pests, rodents, wild animals, but maybe if you are in a spot where, there's other people there, and you're like, hey, we're going just enough for us. I really don't have an abundance to share. Maybe you want to do some little camouflaging so, your HOA doesn't see it, or your neighbors, that sort of thing. You want to choose you want to choose suitable crops. So you want to choose stuff that's easy to grow. Like I said, yellow squash, winter squash, acorn squash, green beans, tomatoes, if you buy them from seedlings, cherry tomatoes, you can let them go to, rot off the vine pretty much. I had one grow. It was the biggest cherry tomato plant I ever grew. And I forgot the type of cherry tomato, but it literally was scraps that I threw out to the chickens. Somebody didn't eat that tomato and the seeds got in the ground. And I had like a 5-foot cherry tomato plant that I did absolutely nothing to, and it grew like you wouldn't believe. So you want to understand, the types of crops you're selecting, how easy they are to grow, what climate area you're in, what zone. So when it starts. Like right now for me, I should have started everything 6 to 8 weeks or 4 to 8 weeks, depending on the seed, before the last frost. And the last frost for me, if you go on to the Farmer's Almanac website, you can actually type in your zip code and it will tell you when your last frost is going to be. And it's pretty darn accurate. Mine's April 25th. So I'm kind of behind the 8 ball, but I'll get stuff in the ground by the time I need to. And then you want to consider storage, preservation. of the food. So if it's anything like acorn squash, winter squash, potatoes, as long as you don't wash the potatoes, you leave them with all the dirt and stuff on them, you just kind of shake them off, put them in a cool, dry place. If you have a root cellar, that's even better, or a basement that's kind of cool and dry, that stuff will last for a very long time, probably through most of the winter. I still have winter squash in my garage right now that I grew late last year. I didn't even think they were going to make it. They did, and they're still in there along with some acorn squash. So, and that was, in the middle of buying a homestead, moving, and everything that goes along with it, and getting the house set up, clearing some land, and that stuff still made it. And I really didn't tend to it that much. So you can look at things. Canning is a great alternative, a great way to store food. I do a lot of canning. Taught myself. I got a book on canning. I think it was like the Survival Guides book to canning, like super straight to the point. Here's a couple recipes. Get your feet wet. There's plenty of videos on there. It's not really hard to do. You can also, like, I made one for dry goods where you can buy a lid that goes over your mason jar. It hooks up to a hose. And if you have like a food saver, sometimes the vacuum thing works on it. I went out and got a brake bleeder from Harbor Freight, put a hose on it and just squeeze it, and it sucks all the air out of there. And then if you want, you can throw an oxygen packet in there too. And you can store your beans like that, your rice, your sugar, flour, all that type of stuff in mason jars, and keep it where no oxygen is getting to it. And it's going to last a lot longer in a cool, dry spot. So with canning, you can do water bathing, you can do pressure cooking, you can throw raw meats right into the canner, pressure cook it for the required time, and that'll sit. Like, I've got meat that's probably a year and a half old now, 2 years old. That's chicken and beef and taco meat that's downstairs, that all I have to do is crack the jar, heat it up, and we've got a meal to go. You can do the same things with soup. So canning's pretty good thing to do, and there's a lot of resources out there for it. Freeze drying. My wife, Alyssa, finally broke down after years of wanting to get a freeze dryer and said, okay, we'll go get one. Unfortunately, it's still sitting at my mother-in-law's. I haven't freeze dried anything in a while. But that being said, a freeze dryer is a good alternative. I will tell you, there is a very, I don't know if it's a steep learning curve, but there's a pretty good sized learning curve with it, especially if you're going to be doing raw meats and you want to freeze dry it, because when you rehydrate them, they got to be cooked right away. And there's a lot of good videos on there too with freeze drying. There's one guy I watched, and he freeze dries everything. I can't remember his name now, unfortunately, but we've done everything from stuffing, turkey, raviolis, meatballs, soups, everything like that. And I did, I think it was like 4 dozen scrambled eggs, filled the trays, freeze dried it. It's like old astronaut food, if you remember that's like. And then you can just reconstitute that, and it tastes the same. Throw it in a Mylar bag, seal it with an air oxygen absorber in it, and you are pretty good to go. Apple chips, bananas, yogurt, drops, all that type of stuff can be done with it. And I think they're definitely worth the money. They've come down in price. They're a little bit more cost effective. They've got different pumps for them now. Some are where you don't have to change the oil in them at all. They cost a little bit more, but if you're not handy, you don't want to do that stuff. I think for a long-term survival aspect, that's even better, because now you're not messing with any type of oils or filters or anything like that. And then the last one, which I think, you can go, I've had friends go to secondhand stores, Salvation Armies, Goodwills. They've picked up dehydrators that are in really good shape. So you don't have to go to Cabela's or Bass Pro Shop or order one online that's $300 that has 50 trays in it. You can go and probably spend $20 at one of your secondhand stores, where I love to get stuff, and you can get a dehydrator and you can start dehydrating stuff. Dehydrating does kind of change the texture and the taste a little bit, as opposed to like the canning or the freeze drying, but it's still a good alternative for, peppers, tomatoes, banana chips, apples, fruit leathers, all that type of stuff that you can do. There's a lot of stuff that you can that you can dehydrate. So enough of that. And then you want to design your layout of your garden so that it's really effective. Now, if you are using grow boxes, maybe you have a couple different, raised garden beds or Mother Earth boxes, or the grow bags where maybe this one's just potatoes. This one's going to have maybe two, if you can fit 2 tomato plants in there, maybe this one's going to have a little, piece of fencing on it for green beans or sugar snap peas, that sort of thing. So you want to just kind of lay things out. I like to just use a pen. I like to look at a lot of ideas online and just kind of sketch stuff out the best I can. I'm by no means an artist, but yeah, so that's just my kind of take on planning your gardening and things you have to think about. in advance. And like I said, I am trying to go kind of quick. So if I'm talking too fast, let me know in the comments and I'd be more than happy to slow down. I think that's just something people in the Northeast kind of talk a lot. And then when I'm a little bit like feeling a little rushed, I talk even faster. So I'm going to try to slow it down a little bit because I know I am speaking a little fast. So next is going to be preparing the soil. Now, for me, this is kind of the stage that I'm in if this snow would ever go away. So, like I've said before, we moved in here late last year, try to get some of the land cleared. So you're going to want to do, if you aren't on a patio or a balcony, or you're in an HOA where you have to use grow bags or some alternative to that, then you want to start clearing an area. You want to get rid of the weeds, rocks, debris, level it as best you can. Maybe start putting in your fencing at this point if you're going to have it on the ground, or if you're going to raise your garden beds, do raised garden beds, you still need to prepare that soil underneath. Like I have a bunch of Pachysandra that these people planted everywhere, and I got river rocks. I have zero grass on my property. It's river rocks, Pachysandra, some bushes, and that's it. So I got to kill all this Pachysandra because I really don't want to use any harsh chemicals on it, but I don't want to pull it up by hand all day long either. So I'll probably use the backhoe to scrape as much as I can. And then I'm going to use a lot of cardboard. So we moved a lot. I saved a lot of the boxes. And for where I'm going to put the raised garden beds, I'm going to put down multiple layers of cardboard to hopefully kill all that Pachysandra underneath. If it's around it, I don't care that much. That'll give me more time to get rid of it. But you want to prepare the area for where you're going to have your garden. Now, you want to also, if you have maybe not great soil, or maybe you don't have a lot of black soil, like I'm in the woods, so my soil is really rich and black. Not that that means that it's good soil, it could still be super acidity, but you want to start improving the soil with, fertilizer, compost, mulch, organic matter. If you have chickens, it's high in nitrogen, so you got to be careful with it, but you throw that in your compost, let that start breaking down. When I was growing up, my father used to take everything out of the chicken coop. We had 40 meat birds, 40 laying hens at one point, I believe it was. So we had a lot of chicken manure. And in the wintertime, he would take that out. We'd clean the coop maybe a couple times through the winter because they added layers of hay and straw in there, with all their manure, would add some warmth to it because it was starting to break down in there. We would just sprinkle that on the garden that we had. And our garden was probably 16 by 20, maybe something like that growing up, maybe a little bit bigger. But we would sprinkle that all over the snow, and then the snow would come on top of it. Then we'd sprinkle some more down, and it would literally work itself into the soil. And then my father was a big rototiller, would till it, and then we'd plant. So you want to prepare, your soil for your needs where you're at. And then, I'll leave it at that for the soil. And then planting your gardening. We've kind of talked about this in past videos. You want to make sure you know when to plant different crops. So you want to work on your timing, your plant selection, we're going to talk about in a second, and then planting techniques, whether it's you need to do it in mounds, it has to be vertical, all that type of stuff, depth and care and instructions. And a lot of that stuff you can find on the seed packets if you're starting from seed. And then if you jump on YouTube, there's a bunch of different ways to like grow tomatoes, cucumbers, all that type of stuff, green beans, where it like hangs from fencing. So it's a lot easier. It gets better airflow. You get better vegetables and produce out of it. So it's just something to look into. And then you want to do, some type of, companion planting, when you're planting your stuff. So maybe stuff in between like herbs and stuff like that. And there are some herbs that, help keep, pests and stuff like that away that you can plant within between your stuff. Because like let's say tomato plants have to be 6 to 8 inches apart. You have that space in between. You can put small stuff in there, that would help with growing everything. So you have that. And then we get into maintenance and care. And I think this is kind of self-explanatory, but for me, when I started off gardening, it literally, I built a raised garden bed at my very first house, and I had some tomato plants in it, which then had some tomato worms come and eat everything. And, it's a learning process. So I want to say, I think this is kind of like, a no brainer, but not really. Sorry. Squirrel caught my attention out of the side window here, but watering, you want to figure out your watering, whether it's on a timer, whether you're using a soaking hose, whether you're going to go out there because you're retired and you want to water it every morning and evening. So you want to figure out what type of watering techniques you're going to do. Me, myself, I try to do it as automated as possible. Weed control, like I said already, cardboard's a good way to keep down weeds. You can put it along your path lines. You can use a landscaper cloth, stuff like that if you really want to. I'm not a huge fan of it, but and then there's, putting down mulch, that sort of thing, everything you can do to kind of suppress the weeds, or you're going to be out there pulling those suckers. Pest management, everything from worms to natural predators, rabbits, all those types of things, squirrels that'll get in there and eat your stuff. You want to make sure that you got some fencing up and that you got some stuff to deter them. I've seen people use fake owls and all kinds of different stuff. Most of the time I just let the dog outside, and we've got cats that are out, so the cats kind of keep the rodents down and stuff like that. You can then also use fertilization. I really don't. I've tried to get away from that as much as possible. If I am using any type of fertilizer, it's more of like I can't think of the name of it now, like the fish manure, that sort of thing. So you want to use organic fertilizers if you are going to use them. Composting tea is a great one. I used to do that. I used to have one of those composters that would turn, and we rotate it, and then it would drain out the bottom. And I collect it all, put that in a sprayer, use that. And then you just want to monitor for diseases or anything else that could impact the maintenance and care of your survival garden while you're growing it. And this also goes in with, if you're having just a regular garden, or maybe you're just planting a few tomatoes, there's still stuff you need to do in order to make sure you get the best possible produce and production out of those plants. And then it comes into harvesting. You want to know when it's the right time to harvest, when, can you harvest continuously, like certain types of lettuce and why can't I think not? All I can think of is bok choy, and that's not what I'm thinking of right now. Swiss chard, something like that, where you can continuously harvest from the outside leaves and it keeps growing. And so you want to look at that. Same thing with like if you're doing strawberries to make jams and stuff to can and process and put away. We already kind of talked about a little bit storage options, where you're going to store excess produce, root cellars, canning, freezing, drying, like we've talked about. What's one thing here at this homestead, our basement's finished, so I'm limited on space where I can store stuff. And I don't want necessarily a whole bunch of stuff in the corner of a room downstairs, because God knows with 5 kids, somebody's going to knock something over. I'm going to have spaghetti sauce all over the downstairs floor or something along those lines. So just take into consideration where you're going to house stuff. If you have an association, we've even tossed around the idea of, if we have an abundance, because all of us kind of garden to some extent, maybe we take all of our surpluses, we figure out a way to preserve it, depending on the method we're using, and then we get a localized space, maybe even rent a small, storage spot, or somebody that has access room in a barn or a basement or some type of, cinder block concrete building where it stays kind of the same temperature all year round. We can utilize that as a centralized location for, the family members that come up short or something like that. So these are all the things you can do within your association. That's why I said, this is only just not an important, personal skill, but it's also a great skill to utilize within your association, because maybe like you break it up and say, hey, Bob, you're going to grow nothing but tomatoes. Sue, you're going to do nothing but potatoes. And maybe she gets 600 pounds of potatoes. You get 250 pounds of tomatoes. I probably should pick some different words there. Somebody does cucumbers, somebody does squash. And now everybody can just divvy all that up amongst your members. Now, one person's not trying to grow a multitude of things. They're just growing one thing, and everybody else is growing other stuff. There's setbacks to that, because if one person doesn't produce, now you're kind of screwed. But it's just ideas you can kick around. So we are at 28 minutes. And like I said, I'm trying to keep this somewhat short today, because I do have to prepare for my town council comments tonight, since I was called out and there was some tomfoolery going on in town I need to address, just because, why not? So these are my top 10 foods that I think would really be good in either, especially a survival garden, because they're going to store well. There's a lot of things you can do with them. And they, some last for a very long time with minimal care as far as like refrigeration and that sort of thing. You just need a cool, dry place. So number 1 on the list, and this is something I haven't grown in a very long time. I'm growing potatoes this year. And potatoes, they are easy to grow. You can get them Tractor Supply, your own potatoes. You can take them. I saw one individual take the spuds, put them in or the tubes they call them, put them in like an egg crate, and then as they start to get the shoots off them, you want to not keep them in a dark spot. You want to put them in a lot of sunlight, because then they'll get shorter, stubbier shoots, which will provide better produce. Now, if you want a lot of potatoes, don't cut the eyes off your potatoes. Leave the eyes on. You'll get more potatoes, as opposed to removing some of the eyes, and you'll get fewer potatoes, but they will be larger. It's completely up how you want to do it. Now, they store well. They provide a good carbohydrate, fiber, and other essential nutrition. And again, don't wash them or anything like that. Just throw them in a basket or however you're going to store them, and then just leave the dirt on them and wash them when you're ready. Some people even put them back in some dirt to keep them, to preserve them even longer. It's completely up to you how you want to do it. My next go-to is going to be tomatoes. These are versatile for cooking. Not only can you just slice them up and put them on some fresh mozzarella, but you can do soups, you can do sauces. There's all different types of stuff you can do with tomatoes. You can freeze dry them, you can dehydrate them. I prefer them dehydrated over freeze drying, honestly. And then you can also can them. So they're very versatile. They have vitamins A and C, and you can can them or freeze them. Like I said, there's you can blanch them and freeze them. And the only thing when you're freezing stuff, like keeping it in a chest freezer or in a freezer in your refrigerator, is that if you do lose power for an extended amount of time, you have the chance of losing that produce. So you want to look at other long-term storage items or ways of doing it. Next is going to be beans. So bush beans or pole beans, I think those are a great thing. They're high in protein and fiber. They can be dried for long-term storage. You can freeze dry them also. A lot of the vegetables I like to freeze dry. The only ones that came out kind of weird were pickles, but I think it was just a kind of pickle that I used. But so beans are a good option. Again, we're looking at protein, high dense, high quality or high calorie food, especially in this type of survival garden. So it doesn't necessarily, you can add this to your regular garden, or maybe you section off a part of your garden. You say, hey, I'm going to grow these foods that I normally don't grow, but they're more high dense in calories and they're going to last a little bit longer, as opposed to maybe growing a bunch of lettuce, right? Lettuce is low in calories. It goes quickly. It doesn't last very long, that sort of thing. One thing I did not throw in this list, and I'm going to throw this in here now, is fruit trees. Now, again, that takes some time. Maybe you grow some apple or peach trees or cherry trees on your property, forest farming or something like that. You just throw them in the woods somewhere. There's some options. You can get them already kind of somewhat grown. Tractor Supply, if you want something locally, I'm sure there's other local nurseries in your area that you can get stuff from. Again, it might take a year to produce, but we're thinking ahead here. We're always thinking of to improve our property, improve our sustainability, and why wait another year to put fruit trees in if you can put 2 or 3 in now? So anyways, I didn't put that on the list, just kind of popped into my head. Next on the list, I love them. Not everybody does, is winter squash. So butternut squash and acorn squash, they're very versatile. There's many ways of cooking them, especially if you slap some butter, cinnamon, some sugar on them. Can't go wrong. They're really good. They're nutrient dense. They store well. They store probably easier than anything else. As long as this outer tough skin is not pierced or cut, they're going to last for a while. Like I pulled mine out probably when we move in here, September, October timeframe. I got mine out of my raised garden bed I had at my mother-in-law's. I got them off the vine. They came here. They've been sitting in the garage since then. We've eaten a couple, and they're still perfectly fine like the day you saw them in the store, and they're not sprayed or anything on them. It's just because that hard skin, once it gets to the ripened stage, it just really protects the fruit on the inside. So again, provides vitamin A and C, fiber, and antioxidants. So look into that. All right. Let's see. Geothermal greenhouses. Yeah, I will say that they are very interesting. I will say this right now. I am a sucker for an episode of Homestead Rescue, the Rainies. I do partake in that show when I've got a few minutes, and some of the stuff where they dig into the ground to build the greenhouses, line them with straw and stuff like that in some of these really harsh environments. I've got a rock farm right now. Rock farm, it's boulders, so I need a bigger backhoe than what I have. But that is definitely a good way of for extending your growing cycle or your growing season. Definitely. I think in Connecticut we have 100 and it's either 125 or 160 growing days, if I remember correctly. Now, these are I threw in here at number 5 are leafy greens, kale, spinach, lettuce. It's more of a consume. They grow quickly. You can use continuous harvesting. I really haven't found a great way to keep lettuce for a long period of time. Spinach, you can blanch it, freeze it, that sort of thing. I have yet to try freeze drying lettuce, spinach, or kale. Maybe I'll do that and let you know how it works out. But it provides essential minerals and vitamins. It's quick and easy to grow. you can continuously harvest it, like I said. So it's more of like a here and now type thing. Carrots are another good one. Those are, good in beta carotene, fiber. Those I've been hit or miss with. I don't know how easy those are to grow for most people. Maybe it's just my soil that I'm at, but I always end up with like little nubs, like 6 inches, somewhere around there. Some have been smaller. But again, it's something that, I'm continuously trying. So maybe you have a grow bag and, you get a better result because you grow them in a grow bag than, I would direct sow into the ground. Onions is another one that's versatile. You can use them in a lot of things now. Not only do you have the tomatoes, but now you have the onions, and then now you start making your sauces and that sort of thing. So kind of keep that in mind. Uh, I actually am starting a red onion from the end of a red onion that I just cooked. I just threw it in water and it's starting to sprout. So there's different things you can do with them. So just keep that in mind. They can also be, let's see, yeah, they do store well. They're versatile in cooking, store well, and provide flavor. The next one, number 8, is peppers. I love peppers, all different kinds: hot peppers, sweet peppers, bell peppers. Those are always great. They got a lot of vitamin A, vitamin C. They're versatile in cooking. So at this point, you got a pretty good tomato sauce going. If you're cooking some of this stuff, you can use them in drying. You can, dehydrate them. You can can them. You can pickle them. So there's a bunch of different ways to store peppers. And I think that's a really good thing that you can add to everything else that you're doing. Number 9 on the list, and this is kind of like, this is one I don't do a lot of. My mother just got a kit for my oldest daughter, Ava, to be able to grow herbs. So we're going to be doing our herb garden, and such things as basil, thyme, and parsley. And I would even throw, it's not really an herb, but maybe some garlic. You could throw garlic in there. That grows really easily. And again, you can use it for different purposes, holistic purposes and cooking. But having a way to enhance your flavors, like we all have our herb rack, right? But some of that stuff, I got probably herb rack. That's some of the herbs probably should be thrown out. They're so old, but eventually some of that stuff is going to go. So you want to have a way to, replenish that. And then you can dehydrate this stuff. You can chop it up. You can keep it for long-term storage, that sort of thing. And the last one on the list, I wish I had some of these, is blueberries, strawberries, and raspberries. Last year we had a really good turnout with strawberries. You could do a lot with them as far as jams and freeze. I did freeze dry strawberries, which was kind of cool. They came out really great. You can dehydrate them also if you want to, and then add them to stuff. But blueberry bushes and raspberry bushes, I grew up with raspberry bushes, black raspberry. They were great. We always had an abundance of them as long as you got to them before the birds. And we had a lot of wild blueberry bushes on the property I grew up on. So we would go out in the woods and we pick all the wild blueberries and stuff like that as kids. So those are just some of the things that are just like that sweet tooth aspect of it, where you can still dehydrate or freeze dry these fruits, and you can still use them later on. I think they're also a really good way to enhance, the blandness of some things, where you're just like, okay, I've had, enough of the squash that I can eat. I really just want to have, something a little sweet. Then you have either freeze dried or dehydrated strawberries or blueberries or something along those lines, raspberries. And again, they all make great jams. They also make great mead if you have them with some honey. You can throw honey, some water, some fruit, some yeast, let that sit and get a nice glass of mead out of it. Really easy. You can do it in gallon batches. And so there's a lot of versatility to this. And I really think that, a lot of this stuff can be put in towards just a regular garden. But I'm looking at it, okay, if I have to do long-term storage, if I have to do high calorie dense foods that's going to fill my belly, as opposed to eating like 3 bowls of lettuce, what can I do? And then of course you can always, add other things to the garden, meat sources and that sort of thing. But hopefully you all found this interesting. Like I said, I wanted to kind of keep this one short today. I've got a bunch of stuff going on, and I worked last night. So I slept for a little bit, got up, ran some errands, did this, and I've got some phone calls to make, and then make my talking points for tonight's town council meeting, which I'm sure I'll put on Facebook. If you're follow me on Facebook, my personal page, maybe I'll put it in the group. But apparently I hit a nerve with some of these people and their low income housing and building all these ridiculous buildings around town, and saying we're not a rural community because it's racist now, I guess. So anyways, that being said, thank you for chiming in today on the geothermal stuff. I appreciate that. And that's maybe something I'll try to get somebody out here in the future to talk about. And I'm starting to lose my daylight in this room. But that being said, thanks for watching. I will see you guys tomorrow, and we will be back to associations, maybe a little bit more doom and gloom, and talking about where to take your association in 2024 or something along those lines. So thanks for watching. Thanks for going to the websites. Thanks for joining the Facebook group, the Telegram group, and leaving your comments on YouTube. I really appreciate it. I will see you guys tomorrow at the same time. Peace.
All over the country, and maybe there will be.
People need to start taking to the streets. This is a dictator.
Enemies of the state.